Recently, we painted up a Space Wolf, and we did that using a limited colour scheme and only around 5 paints in our palette overall. And I really enjoyed that. And because I enjoyed it so much, what we're going to be doing today is essentially doing a very similar thing, taking a limited palette, but this time painting up a salamander. The only other thing worth mentioning is the fact that we did do a little bit of a conversion on this model, taking the bolter from the Assault Intercessor, removing that and giving them a flamer, which I feel is more apt for a salamander. For this model, our 5 paints are going to be a dark purplish grey, a light bone, a medium bright green, as well as a very pale green. We then also have a red, which we're going to be using as a complement to the greens in this scheme. For this model, I want a slightly more dramatic lighting when compared to the Space Wolf we painted last time. But we still will be starting off by base coating all of the armour in the same colour, which is going to be this time a mix between our dark grey and our green. We are aiming for this colour to be around halfway in the darkness range between the two colours, also sometimes known as the value range. For this project, we are going to be mixing a fair bit of colours together, so we're going to be using a wet palette in order to help these mixes stay a little bit more usable for a little bit longer. With the base applied, we can start laying down some shadows. And here we want one side to be in intense shadow or colour change, and the rest to be of a normal sort of brightness. We're aiming for this side to be the offhand side behind the flamer. This means that the sections facing that direction will need to start getting a heavy darkening effect, while the rest stays bright or even brighter than before. We can slowly mix in more and more of our purple grey into our previous mix, which was obviously purple grey and green, building up the stronger shadows in the darker recesses. We applied around 3 to 4 layers of various shades and shadow mixes, going back and forth to smooth out the mix where needed. With all of the mixes applied, we can take our pure purple grey that has been our darkest colour and then use a very thin application of this to apply the darkest shadow areas. At this point, with all the shadows laid down, we can move across to all of the highlights and the brightening up on all of the other viewing angles. And for this, naturally, we base coated the entire model in a mix of our dark purple and our green. So we're just going to now start adding more green to that mix and brightening it up. If we have been using a wet palette like we are today, as long as we're doing this within the same couple of hours, same day, and entirely depending on your local weather conditions, the previous mix that we used may still be usable, and then we can just add green to that so that we know 100% we are coming in with a brighter colour. If not, we just need to make sure to test it a little bit just to make sure that whatever new mix we make is brighter than the base coat that we first applied. With our highlight mix now in brush, we can check that we've subscribed and start highlighting. This first pass is going to be relatively broad, covering all of the main areas facing our chosen light sources. The base coat is going to essentially remain in the sections nearest the darkest shadows that we've painted in, just to help blend those tones. But otherwise, we're going to be bringing the armor up in value. Similar to when we tackled the shadows, we are going to be doing this by slowly brightening up the color and applying multiple layers. We want to slowly add more and more green to the mix, going up through until we are essentially highlighting with just our pure green. As we're doing this, we need to make sure that we remember to highlight in a volumetric manner, varying the intensity and direction of the highlight based on the surface and how it's facing our light. You can see here as we highlight this arm, we are not making it consistent across all of the arm and the color being the same. Rather, we are picking a line across the shapes and then cascading it across this and then out along the edges. This should hopefully sell that effect of the scene lighting impacting it without requiring a lot and back and forth. We will need to constantly check the viewing angles of the model just to make sure the placement is right, but this should be a nice quick application. With all the armor done, we can move across to things now like the trim, as well as smaller elements like the weapons and pouches and elements like that. And to be honest, for things like the trim and the weapons, I think I made a slight error in judgment, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But for now, we are going to be kicking off all of those elements, and things like the weapons and the trim we're going to be bulk basing those in a mixture of red and our dark greyish purple. This dark mix can be used to base all of our desired areas. For us, this is going to be the trim, as mentioned, but also the insignia, the central faceplate, as well as sections of the flamer. With this down, we can then start highlighting. And the colours that we need for this is going to be our last mix, but we're going to add in a little bit of the bone. This lighter colour then can be used as our mid-tone, covering most of the trim and most of the raised sections of any of the other panels we're painting. From here, we can slowly, as you would expect, add more and more of the bone to our previous mix, making a lighter and warmer tone as we go, progressing up through the highlights till we are effectively undertaking a thin edge or spot highlights with the pure thinned bone. We need to remember to highlight in the paths that we laid out before, trying to build these areas in. This means we can come in with a thinned dark grey and apply glazes of this across the shadow sections or any of the deep recesses on the lighter side. This will rob some of the brightness out of the highlights a little bit, so what we're going to do is return some of this luster by quickly reapplying a thin spot and edge highlight, again with the bone. At this point, we're going to start running through painting the weapons and a few of the other smaller details, and it's a nice quick process, so don't worry. But as you've got this far in the video, I just kind of wanted to ask, if you are enjoying the video, please drop a like. It helps me to know what sort of content you guys like. Equally, if there's anything that you think I could do to improve this video that would have made it better for you, why not drop that down in the comments and we can have a chat about it, and hopefully I can improve this channel. With that all said, enough of the let's please help the poor YouTuber bit, and we can go back to the painting. Also, I need to mention, as I said earlier, there was an error in judgment that I think I made in regards to the trim and the weapons and bits and bobs like that. You'll notice when painting the flamer and bits like that, we're using a brighter, slightly nicer tone that would have worked better, I think, for the trim than the colour that we used for the trim. So I think I'm going to learn from this, and just bear in mind that I probably should have swapped those colours around. I actually quite like the red and green mix as a base coat for what could potentially be non-metallic metal. So just thought it's worth highlighting that at this point. And with that all said, we can jump back. We can start by kicking off all the red sections, these being the weapon parts as well as the chainsword surround. These can be started in the same red-grey mix that we used on the trim. But then what we're going to do is start to follow this up with some pure red highlights, building it up slowly, adding a little bit more red into the mix as we go, as before with all of the other sections. Whereas for the pouches, the paper and the leathers, we can mix our red and green together, giving us a relatively neutral brown tone. This will base coat nicely over all of the areas that we want, and then we can start to apply some scratchy highlights using the mix of red and green, but then also adding a little bit of our pale green. This is the same mix and recipe that we are using for the barrel as well as the blades on the chainsword, but we are actually going overall to highlight to a slightly higher level. On the barrel and the chainsword blades, we are going to be making sure that the highlights are clean to reflect the metallic nature, as well as pushing it one step further with a pure pale green highlight. Once we've gone through all of that work and then found a stray base that we can mount our salamander onto, we have a completed model with some strong lighting effect. And to be honest, I quite like the outcome of this. I think the placement as you rotate the model makes everything look good. The shadows, I think, are where they should be. You should hopefully be able to see the model on the screen now, and do let me know, do you think we've gone too far, could have pulled it back a little bit, or overall, would you have done something completely different? We were using the scale 75 paints for this. It's a new paint range that I picked up. Well, not a new paint range, it's a new to me paint range, which I picked up and I've been testing them out, and to be honest, I do quite enjoy using them, and I may paint up a few more Space Marines similar with a limited palette. So if you've got a desire for seeing another chapter or something like that, let me know down in the comments below. Obviously, I've spoken before in this video about the Space Wolf that we also painted up using the scale 75 colours. And if you want to see how we painted this guy, why not check out this video here? Otherwise, it's just a case of remembering to subscribe so that we can see you next time.